we've obviously been quite busy. You know, it's not very often we do 4 gigs in the same place. You know, so on the show days we've been obviously thinking about the show. Yesterday we went and played football, and it's been great. It's been a good 4 days. I don't know if it's changed for good. I mean, I think since we've been around, since we did our first album, you know, we've seen so many bands come and go, you know. And there's some bands that are still around, you know, or there's some artists that are still around. But I think particularly in the UK, you know, music scene changes very quickly. You know, it seems to be one of those places in England where a lot of bands have kind of 5 minutes of glory, you know, and then it's on to the next thing, you know. But I always feel like bands aren't really given much of a chance in the UK anymore, you know. They sort of have one album, everybody loves them, and then everybody's looking for something new, you know. I mean, when I think back to, you know, when we started, you know, you had I know the Strokes were American, but they were very big in England, you know. And then they disappeared, and you know, then you had a lot more sort of electronica stuff coming through, and that's all sort of dying away again. So it's just constantly changing. But of course, you got all the people like, you know, Noel Gallagher's always around, always has been, you know. But yeah, it's just a changing thing. I don't think it's necessarily for good or for bad, you know. I think it's just one of those things that will always change. I think when we were, before we started touring this album, the whole point of the way the stage was built was to be able to get closer to the crowd. And obviously we had the idea of having a 360 stage, so we could have people behind. And we wanted to have all these areas where we could actually get down and feel like we were in the crowd, like the thrust at the front, you know. And I think it kind of developed from there, really. I think Matt just felt that, you know, there was a lot of songs where he was, you know, tied to his guitar, tied to his microphone, couldn't move around, couldn't get close to the crowd, you know. So, you know, I think he just wanted to find a few songs where he felt that maybe the guitar side of things wasn't that important, you know. I mean, Starlight it's not really a guitar song, you know. I mean, it is, but it's not like Survival where you've got tons of lead guitar stuff happening. So, you know, I think for, you know, for songs like that and songs like Follow Me, you know, we felt it'd be great if he could just put down the guitar for a song and actually get right out in there, you know, in with the crowd, you know. And I think it adds to the performance element of the band, you know. And I think that's important. I think we need to, you know, constantly think of ways of moving forward. I think the performance element of this band has always been important, and you know, you have to try and move that forward in whatever way you can, you know. I mean, I collect guitars, and I think I've got probably over 100 guitars at home. And I took them, when we were making the album, I took them to the studio and I had them all lined up. And you know, with each new song we did, I tried a different bass. And you know, there was quite a few basses that I had that I played, and I thought, why the fuck did I buy this? You know, it was a piece of shit. I think I've got some old Gibson bass that I bought and spent quite a lot of money on it because it was quite old. And I tried to use it in the studio, and it was just didn't work for anything. Go back on eBay. I think it is what it is, you know. I don't think there's any point in fighting against it. I mean, obviously, I think there's pros and cons to it, you know. I think, you know, it's obviously great that people can have easier access to your music, and I think it exposes your music to a lot more people. But at the same time, it becomes diluted as well because everything else is out there for free as well, you know. And you can listen to anything, you know. I mean, when I was at school, when I was at college, you know, there was you know, that big deal of having some money and having enough money to buy a record, going into the shop, going home and playing that record to death, you know, for 6 months.
Right.
Because you couldn't afford to buy an album every week, you know. You had one album and you invested a lot of time in it. And I think that's the problem now, is that people don't do that anymore. People have free access to music. So people can listen to one thing for a little while and then they move on to the next thing. And it, you know, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think that's why the music scenes change so quickly. Because people have so, you know, easy access to other music. They don't have to wait, they don't have to save money, they just click a button and it's there, you know. Well, I don't usually do vinyl, but I did buy an old record player recently, more as kind of a piece of furniture than anything. It was an old 60s record player, and it only works in mono. So I bought some old mono records. I think I bought Pet Sounds and a couple of Beatles albums, one of the Who albums. But I don't really listen to vinyl. I mean, I use iTunes a lot. I buy most of my stuff on iTunes. What changes?
Yeah. Be honest with yourself, man, and with the team.
I wouldn't.
It's not the season.
I think they're doing okay at the moment. You know, I think we got promoted last season, so we're in a more difficult league, and we've had some fairly good results this season. You know, we've done okay. You know, the last two we've not done so well. We've lost 2 in a row, but you know, I think we're in 10th position, and you know, we're for a new division. I think that's fairly good. You know. I don't think there's anything in there that I would change to. I think there's players we could add to the squad. We need a good goal scorer. We don't have a really good goal scorer, but other than that, I think they're doing okay. Probably Glastonbury. I think. I mean, Reading Festival's a great festival to play, and it's a festival that I used to go to when I was younger. But I think the thing is with Reading, it's historically been a rock festival, you know, and I think that's why it is great to play, because the crowds are crazy. You know, everybody that's there likes rock and heavy music, you know. But I think Glastonbury is the kind of festival that everybody takes an interest in, even if you don't go. You know, it's always on TV, you know, for the whole weekend, and it's much more eclectic, you know. So people. You know, there'd be a lot of people watching it on TV who wouldn't necessarily know who we are, you know, so I think the exposure you get from Glastonbury is probably more, you know, there's probably more exposure. And I don't know, I think it's just something about, you know, when we headlined Glastonbury in 2004, you know, we were underdogs when we did that, you know. A lot of people were saying to us, you know, you're not really big enough to be doing this, you know, and we were agreeing, you know, we were unsure as to whether we should do it, you know. Not big enough to headline Glastonbury, you know. I mean, when you look back over the years at people that have headlined Glastonbury, some of these people were massive, and we just weren't at the time. So, you know, I think we had a real point to prove when we did that, you know, and it turned out to be one of the best shows we've ever played, you know, or certainly to that point in time. I've not actually heard any of it. I was never really a Black Sabbath fan, to be honest, but yeah, I think it's great. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are happy to see them back together, you know. I think it's the same with every reunion, isn't it? You know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, you know. More often than not, they don't. But, you know, sometimes they do, and I'm sure it'd be great.